Flames licked at the edges of Vega 9's crumbling walls as Captain Elena Frost surveyed the battlefield. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her voice was steady when she barked orders into her comm unit. Hold positions! I don't care if you're out of ammo, throw rocks if you have to. The Coalition defenders scrambled to obey, a patchwork of alien species and humans working side by side. The Dominion forces were relentless, their towering mechs and relentless infantry pressing the attack. Captain, we're down to 20% shield capacity, Lieutenant Jackson Farrow, her second-in-command, reported. Sweat gleamed on his forehead despite the frigid air. Elena didn't look up from the hollow map flickering on the table before her. Then we make 20% work. Redirect auxiliary power to the shields and deploy mines along the east ridge. If we're going down, we're taking as many of them with us as we can. Jackson hesitated. You think reinforcements will come? Elena glanced at him, her green eyes blazing with determination. Reinforcements? No. But victory? That's something we carve out ourselves. Outside, the sounds of war intensified, explosions shaking the ground, the guttural roars of Dominion soldiers, and the sharp whine of laser fire. A Coalition scout burst into the command center, her scaled face pale with fear. Captain? Dominion battlecruiser incoming. It's massive. Elena clenched her fists. A battlecruiser meant orbital bombardment, and Vega 9 wouldn't last long against that kind of firepower. Activate the decoy emitters, Elena ordered. Make them think we've got reinforcements inbound. If we can't outgun them, we'll outsmart them. The scout nodded and hurried off. Jackson leaned closer. You've got a plan, don't you? A wry smile tugged at Elena's lips. Of course I do. It's just a terrible one. Minutes later, the Dominion cruiser emerged through the smoke, its sleek hull glinting ominously. A deep hum resonated as it charged its main cannon. No, Elena whispered. Across the battlefield, Coalition engineers triggered the decoy emitters. Phantom ships appeared on the Dominion scanners, an illusion of reinforcements closing in from all sides. Confusion rippled through the Dominion ranks. The battlecruiser hesitated, recalibrating its targeting systems. Captain, Jackson said, eyes wide. It's working. Elena grinned. Good. Now let's make them regret underestimating us. All units, attack! With a thunderous roar, the Coalition forces surged forward. Elena led the charge, her pulse rifle blazing. As the Dominion lines faltered, Elena knew one thing for certain: humanity wasn't just surviving, they were winning. The silence beneath Vega 9's surface was unnerving. Only the faint hum of portable lights and the occasional crunch of boots on debris disturbed the stillness. Captain Elena Frost swept her flashlight across the tunnel walls, the jagged metal remains of a long-forgotten structure reflecting back at her. We're definitely not in Coalition territory anymore, muttered Lieutenant Jackson Farrow, his voice low but tense. Elena glanced back at her team, a mix of humans and aliens, weary but resolute. They were deep in the underground labyrinth, chasing a lead that might turn the tide of the war. Behind them, the Dominion forces regrouped, their relentless pursuit inching closer. Keep moving, Elena ordered. We don't have time to sightsee. A bulky Croth warrior, her scales shimmering faintly in the light, grunted. This place reeks of old death. Whatever's down here, it's not friendly. It doesn't have to be friendly, Elena replied, pushing forward. It just has to work. The team reached a junction where the tunnel split into 3 paths. Elena stopped, consulting the holographic map on her wrist pad. It flickered, struggling to maintain its signal in the interference-rich environment. Captain, Jackson said, peering into the darkened paths. This place wasn't built by the Coalition, was it? No, Elena said, her voice tight. This is pre-galactic war tech. Older than the Coalition. Older than most of us can comprehend. Jackson frowned. Then how did it end up here? Wrong question, Elena said, tapping a path on the map. The right question is, what's it hiding? Move out. They descended further, the air growing colder and more oppressive. The walls began to change, smooth alloy giving way to intricate patterns etched into the metal. Ancient symbols glowed faintly, pulsating as the team passed. "What is this place?" whispered a young engineer, her voice trembling. "Evidence," Elena said, her tone sharp. "Evidence that humanity didn't come into this war as empty-handed as the galaxy thinks." The engineer looked puzzled but didn't press further. The team rounded a corner and came face to face with a massive, sealed door. It towered over them, its surface covered in the same glowing symbols. At its center was an imprint, vaguely humanoid in shape. "Is that a handprint?" Jackson asked, incredulous. "Not just any handprint," Elena said, stepping forward. She removed her glove and placed her hand against the imprint. A faint vibration coursed through the air, and the symbols flared to life. The door groaned, ancient mechanisms grinding as it slowly slid open. A rush of stale air escaped, carrying with it a metallic tang. "Stay sharp," Elena said, raising her weapon. Beyond the door was a vast chamber, its walls lined with consoles and dormant machinery. At its center stood a monolithic device, its core glowing with an eerie blue light. "What the hell is that?" Jackson asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elena stepped closer, her breath catching. "It's a weapon." "A prototype," the Croth warrior hissed. This is no weapon. It's alive." The team exchanged uneasy glances. The device pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat. Jackson approached cautiously. "Captain, are you saying this thing was built by humans?" Elena nodded. "Decades ago, before humanity was even aware of the Coalition or the Dominion. This tech was stolen during an early contact event, classified, buried deep. I didn't believe it existed until now." "Why didn't we know about this?" the engineer asked. "Because Earth's leaders thought the galaxy wasn't ready for us," Elena said bitterly. "Turns out, we weren't ready for the galaxy." A sharp beep interrupted her thoughts. Elena's wristpad flashed red, a proximity alert. "They're here," she said, spinning around. Dominion forces poured into the chamber, their weapons gleaming under the harsh light. At their forefront stood Commander Kalra Silak, his presence imposing. Well, Kalra said, his voice smooth and mocking. "The little insects scurry deep into their nest. And what do they find? A trinket they don't understand." Elena raised her weapon, her eyes locking with Kalratha's. "You don't understand it either." Kalra smirked. "Perhaps not. But I don't need to understand it to destroy it, and you." Blaster fire erupted, the chamber descending into chaos. Elena dove behind a console, her heart pounding. "Defensive positions!" she shouted. "Hold them off!" The team fought fiercely, but the Dominion had the advantage in numbers and firepower. Sparks flew as energy bolts ricocheted off the ancient walls. "Elena!" Jackson called, his voice strained. "We can't hold this position." Elena's mind raced. Her gaze flicked to the device, its glow intensifying. She didn't know what activating it would do, but leaving it in Dominion hands wasn't an option. "Cover me!" she yelled, breaking from cover. She sprinted to the device, ignoring the firestorm around her. Her fingers flew across its console, the alien symbols incomprehensible but strangely intuitive. "What are you doing?" Kalra shouted, his composure slipping. "Changing the rules," Elena snapped. The device roared to life, a surge of energy blasting outward. Dominion soldiers were thrown back, their weapons malfunctioning. The chamber shook violently, cracks spidering across the walls. Kalratha's eyes widened. "You fool! You'll kill us all! Better us than everyone else," Elena retorted, hitting one final command. The device emitted a blinding light, and for a moment, everything was silent. Then the chamber began to collapse. "Fall back!" Elena shouted, her team scrambling toward the exit. Kalrath hesitated, rage and fear warring on his face, before retreating with his forces. Elena and her team barely made it out, the tunnel behind them caving in. As they emerged into the open air, gasping for breath, the ground rumbled beneath their feet. "Captain," Jackson said, his voice shaking. What just happened? Elena looked back at the ruined base, her expression grim. We woke up something big, she said. And now the galaxy will never be the same. The Coalition fleet emerged from hyperspace above Vega 9, battered and pieced together from the remnants of dozens of smaller groups. The odds were grim. The Dominion Armada encircled the planet like vultures, their flagship, a colossal dreadnought, looming at the center. Captain Elena Frost stood on the bridge of her frigate, resolute, her jaw tight as she studied the tactical readout. The ancient device, now secure in the ship's cargo hold, was their only shot. Status report, she demanded. Lieutenant Jackson Farrow leaned over the console, his face pale but determined. Shields are holding at 78%, but we've got Dominion frigates closing in fast. Fleet estimates put us outnumbered 3-1. Elena's lips pressed into a thin line. We've faced worse odds. A voice crackled over the comm. It was General Vreichel, the reptilian commander of the Coalition forces. His tone was sharp, impatient. Captain Frost, this is suicide. We need to regroup, not charge headfirst into annihilation. And leave the Dominion to deploy their own weapon? Elena shot back. You saw what that thing did on the surface. If Calrath activates his copy, this war is over, our way of life is over. The general hesitated. What's your plan, Captain? Elena glanced at Jackson, who nodded silently. We hit them where it hurts. A direct assault on the dreadnought. We use the device to disrupt their systems long enough to punch through and disable it. Madness, Vreichel muttered. But after a moment, his voice softened. But perhaps the kind of madness we need. The comm line went dead, leaving Elena with her crew. She turned to them, her green eyes blazing. We've been underestimated since the day they dragged us into this war, she said, her voice steady. They think humans are reckless, weak, unworthy. Let's show them what that underestimation costs. Cheers erupted from the bridge, fierce and defiant. Jackson, she continued, prepare the device. Target the dreadnought's main power grid. Everyone else, ready for combat. The battle began with chaos. The Dominion frigates surged forward, unleashing volleys of plasma fire. Coalition ships scattered, forming a loose net as they returned fire. Explosions blossomed across the void, casting flickering light over the battlefield. The Resolute weaved through the carnage, its smaller size allowing it to evade most of the Dominion's heavy weapons. Elena gripped the edge of her console, barking orders. Evasive maneuvers! Focus fire on their support craft! Jackson's voice cut through the din. Captain, the device is charging, but it's unstable. Whatever we do, we have one shot at this. Then we make it count, Elena replied. As they approached the dreadnought, the enormity of the ship became clear. It bristled with weaponry, its shields glowing faintly. Calrath's voice echoed through an open broadcast, cold and mocking. Humans! Always reaching beyond your grasp. Do you really believe you can defeat us with scraps and desperation? Elena activated the comm, her tone dripping with defiance. Better than sitting on a throne, drowning in arrogance. Let's see who's left standing. Calrath's response was cut short as the Resolute fired its main cannons, a concentrated burst slamming into the dreadnought's shields. The impact rippled outward but left no visible damage. Shields are too strong, Jackson said, his voice tight. Not for long, Elena said. She turned to the engineer manning the device. Are we ready? The engineer hesitated. Captain, this thing isn't just a weapon, it's adaptive. We can't fully predict what it will do. Elena's gaze hardened. If we don't use it, we lose everything. Activate it. The engineer nodded, his hands flying over the console. The device roared to life, its core pulsating with energy. A blinding wave of blue light erupted, spreading out in all directions. For a moment, the battlefield fell silent. Then chaos erupted as Dominion ships faltered, their systems sparking and shutting down. The dreadnought's shields flickered, then collapsed entirely. It worked! Jackson shouted, a grin breaking across his face. Target their engines and weapons! Elena ordered. All ships, concentrate fire on the dreadnought. The Coalition fleet surged forward, seizing the moment. Missiles and plasma bursts hammered the dreadnought, explosions ripping through its hull. On the bridge of the Resolute, Elena's victory was cut short by a warning alarm. "Captain!" the engineer called, panic in his voice. "The device, it's destabilizing. If we don't shut it down, it'll take us with it." Elena clenched her fists. "Options? We can eject it, but it'll need a manual override. Someone has to stay behind to activate it." Jackson stepped forward. "I'll do it." "No," Elena said sharply. "That's an order." She turned to the crew, her expression resolute. "We've come too far to fail now. Jackson, you're in command. Get this ship clear." Jackson grabbed her arm, his voice breaking. "Elena, you don't have to." "I do," she said, cutting him off. "Earth needs you to lead them. You're the better strategist." Before he could protest further, she turned and sprinted toward the device chamber. The device's core glowed brighter with each passing second, its hum reaching an ear-splitting pitch. Elena's fingers flew over the console, sweat dripping down her face as she initiated the ejection sequence. Over the comm, Calratha's voice returned, furious but strained. "You think this changes anything? Humanity will always be beneath us." Elena smiled grimly. "Funny. From where I'm standing, you're the one falling." The device ejected from the Resolute, spinning toward the dreadnought. Its core erupted in a final pulse, enveloping the Dominion flagship in a massive shockwave. On the bridge of the Resolute, Jackson watched as the dreadnought's engines exploded, tearing the massive ship apart. Cheers erupted from the Coalition fleet as Dominion forces began to retreat. But Jackson's joy was tempered by the sinking realization that Elena's signal had gone silent. In the aftermath, the Coalition celebrated their victory. Humanity, once dismissed as irrelevant, had proven their worth in the galaxy's eyes. Jackson stood on the bridge, staring at the wreckage of the dreadnought. A single tear slipped down his face as he whispered, "We'll make you proud, Elena." Far below, in the debris field of Vega 9, a lone escape pod drifted in the void, its occupant unconscious but alive.